And good morning. It is time for the Mike Hewitt Show, brought to you by RenegadeRiver.com. And you've been waiting to get in here, haven't you, Mike?
I'm telling you, you know it. I've got the coffee silo going. We are ready. Folks, we've got Ludwig von Wiedendorski riding shotgun. Miles Bauer on the line with us, along with our guest this morning, who is Tammy Clark. Tammy Clark, welcome to the Mike Hewitt Show.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
And listen, I'm excited to have you on. We've been talking about this for quite a while now. Now, I've got a Smith & Wesson Shield Ported is my carry today. Do you have your carry arm on yet?
I don't. I have my coffee, and
Okay.
it is in my purse, and
There you
it's
go.
holder.
Listen, folks, what I'm excited about having Tammy on about, of course, this show is sponsored by Renegade River, and I'm obviously a gun advocate and a constitutional advocate, Second Amendment. Miles Bauer is, Ludwig certainly is, Brian Thomas that keeps us on path is. But the reason I'm telling you the story that way is that it seems so often that the narrative is told by somebody that's 55 years old with a gray beard. And so that would be my part in this conversation. Not a word, Ludwig. You're close enough I could swat at you. And so, Tammy, you don't resemble any of those things, thank goodness. So you're a gun person. Tell me how it is that you ended up becoming a gun advocate, and specifically why you carry, and do you think other people ought to be carrying also?
Yes, absolutely. First and foremost, it is our right, and I'm a big believer that if we don't exercise our rights, we can easily lose them. Second, I'm a woman. I'm a business owner. I travel the country by myself. And as a woman in the construction industry, I'm in a male-dominated industry. We're seeing that change. Fortunately, there are more and more women on job sites with me, but I found myself many times as I travel, and especially in inner city areas or on a very large project, maybe 50 acres, 20 buildings, in the backside of a project doing inspections, and I look around and I'm alone with some tradesmen, and there were enough situations that I realized I need to start paying more attention to my own safety and security. And so I got my concealed pistol license, and I began carrying as I travel, because my bodyguard now is Smith & Wesson.
Amen. Listen, I got to tell you, Renegade River, we sell a lot of concealed carry firearms, but I think what most folks are not aware of is that probably 30% of Renegade River's concealed carry business are to women. And that's an important part. One of where I saw a large surge in that was 3 or so years ago. You may remember, given your background in terms of business, there was several stories where some real estate women had found themselves, one raped, one murdered, where you're meeting people. It goes to your point, where you're meeting people out vacant homes or farm areas or construction buildings with no way to defend yourself. And so there was a sudden surge in female gun ownership that hasn't stopped. And one thing that's interesting for listeners is that this isn't a party thing. A fair percentage of the women that are buying guns from me are probably going to be voting for Hillary, which I find fascinating, because it's kind of like saying I'm going to vote against my right to defend myself while I'm demanding that right. But that's for another show. So speaking of that, do you work with a lot of women that also carry?
I do. In fact, I have found the same thing. It's really interesting to me, because some of my business associates, you wouldn't necessarily know it because we're all discreetly packing.
Right.
But as I get to know more and more women in the business, especially in the construction industry, and I talk with colleagues, I find that more and more of my associates are concealed pistol license holders, and they do have their guns either in their bag, like I do. I have a purse and I have a computer bag that is designed as a carry bag. Nobody would know it, but it's got the holder right inside. So all I got to do is I just need to slip my hand inside my bag, and I have my hand on my gun, or it's on my body, one or the other. But I find more and more women are having this conversation, and what I thought the same thing. What I find interesting is that many of these women are Hillary supporters.
Right.
So once we have a glass of wine and go out after work, then the conversations start getting really interesting. When we can, start talking about this. Why would you vote for somebody who is intentionally trying to disarm American citizens? You realize that is her goal.
Hating to be cliche, but she wants to disarm everybody except for herself and the people that surround her.
Well, of course, the elitists can do whatever they want to do. They're above the rest of us, but. It gets really interesting when I start having some conversations, and what I have found is that, to be very honest with you, most people are not educated enough on the issue. They don't realize the agenda.
You're exactly right, but in terms of firearms, one of the areas I wanted to make sure to touch on is exactly education, because when I'm selling folks firearms for concealed carry, and by the way, this is one of the arguments that the anti-firearms group use, is that if you're not properly trained, these things can become a weapon against yourself. And,
exactly.
And listen, so anyone that's bought a gun from me gets to hear the same speech where I say, I've got 4 daughters and 9 grandkids. If you're not going to practice, please don't buy the gun. And I literally say that, and I've had some people offended with me, and frankly, I'm okay with that, because I think it's important to have that hat on and that understanding of the gravity of the circumstance. When I put a gun on, I'm strapping on a lot of liability and responsibility that goes with my right. That goes with my right to carry. So and setting that part aside, when we're looking at instruction or learning or practicing, it's a really fun sport. It really is.
Oh, it is. It is, and I totally agree with you. I mean, where else would we be able to take on such liability without the requirements of the responsibility? We have to be able to meet the responsibility of carrying that kind of liability.
Right.
And so we take our kids up to our cabin, and we are practicing. We're teaching them firearm safety. I've grown up in a home with guns, but I never really paid attention personally to shooting, or never really, I guess, was that interested in it until I realized that I needed to protect myself. There was a lot that I needed to do to make sure that my security level, I'm 100% responsible for my own security when I'm out there traveling by myself.
Right.
That's when I began to take it more seriously. So even though I grew up around guns, and we did practice, my dad had us all take gun safety classes, and so, generations in my family have grown up with guns and shooting, and surprisingly, nobody has ever been shot. Surprisingly, I have people say, you've never had any accidents, all these guns in your home for generations, but what you said is very true, because it comes back to education and training. When you train for anything, you're much better prepared. So we are practicing all the time, up at our cabin, and like I said, we have our kids practicing. We've had them take gun safety courses. You don't just hand a weapon to somebody without training. That's very dangerous, and it's irresponsible.
One of the points you made along with that about no one being hurt with the fact that I grew up around firearms myself, and I was just looking at cam shots of Renegade River right now, and I can see long guns. They must be all broke, because not a single one of them has been moving while we're on the air. None of them. They're just sitting there.
Can you believe
very frustrating. None of them are. They're just sitting there. Miles, you own long guns. Do any of yours move without on their own? Do they go hurt people in the middle of the night while you're sleeping?
No, I've never seen the locks come off by themselves. I've never seen the safety go off by itself.
It's an amazing thing.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah. I know. That whole conversation drives me crazy, but I try to remember to just have the conversation as much as I need to, because people are just simply not educated. They're afraid of something they don't understand. And if they haven't grown up with guns, it's scary to a lot of people.
It is. But back not in I'm 55. In my lifetime, so we're not talking. And Ludwig is probably thinking that was forever ago. But in my lifetime, they used to do rifle class. They had training. And so folks that were maybe not from a gun family still didn't look at it like it was this taboo, fearful thing that caused them to want to play with it, frankly.
Right.
And so it's just an amazing thing how we've been able to separate it. I was in a debate a couple months ago. It was literally a formatted debate, two pro-gun people, two anti-gun people, and each one of us had, I think, 3 or 4 minutes to start with our little presentation, if you will, to give the viewers a flavor for who we were. And it was my position then, and it remains my position, that if we're talking about ways to curb violence, all the sides in this can get along wonderfully. If that's truly our goal, is to curb violence. But what happens with the uber left, and I don't mean your average Democrat, but the uber left, they don't want to actually curb violence. They want to restrict guns. And I think the problem with that is that we see in societies, Chicago's a great example of it, but forget that because it's so easy. We can go to Paris, we can go to Moscow. Anytime you have these uber gun restraints, you don't solve the problem. You still have the human nature of violence. We've got to get our heads around the idea of why are people violent. If we can solve that, then the rest of these arguments fall on the floor. On the floor. That's my view of it.
That's exactly right, and really what it speaks to is a bigger cultural issue.
Amen to that.
You know, we had guns everywhere in every home. People, 12-year-olds would go hunting with Dad to provide the food for the family. I mean, it was just not an issue, and nobody was shooting each other because we didn't have a violence problem. And restricting, really what you're talking about, when they're trying to control guns and take away guns, really what you're talking about with the uber left, it is not about guns. It's about controlling us. Yeah. It's totally about control. Yep. And that is not conspiracy. That's just the way it is. But controlling guns just doesn't work.
No, but they use some fascinating tactics, and we've talked about this show from time to time about the concept of the evil assault rifle. But they've taken the word or the term AR and made it an assault rifle when actually it's an Armalite style rifle. And of course they can use these as fear tactics. So we'll have gun advocates literally say, I don't know why a person needs to own a gun like that. I said, you mean a really hot 22? Is that what you're saying? And this is Grandpa's favorite varmint round? Is that what you're saying to me?
Right,
exactly. But it truly goes to training and awareness. Yep. And of course they want to stomp down training and awareness. Because if you do that, then the veil of this evil veil kind of falls on the floor along with the other things that we discussed. It's just a fascinating world. Miles, now when you shot some competition with an AR, is that right?
Yep.
And what caused you to want to be involved in that?
It's just like any other sport, whether it's football, baseball, or whatever. It was just fun, attempting to sit down and gain the discipline to be able to shoot. In my competitions, was it 200 yards, 500 yards, and 1,000 yards. And so, and we're shooting paper targets, and it's just the competition as if you were a baseball player trying to hit better or trying to throw better or whatever. It's the same thing shooting AR. It was just a sport.
It is, and it's the same as skeet shooters. Now, Tammy, do you do any long gun shooting or just handguns? Or?
No, I don't. Just handguns.
Okay, and now listen, I grew up with just handguns, so I'm for me it's been a learning curve to get into. Okay. It really has. I mean, my dad was an amateur middle class level gun collector, so we was always trading and bartering and trading and buying and trying to end up with the perfect collection. Whatever he had, he always needed just one more. But they were always almost exclusively handguns. And so I remember one of the points before we ran out of time with you, I remember shooting as young as 4 years old, literally sitting on the ground between my dad's. So picture this, he's sitting on his butt with his knees up, and I'm 4 years old sitting in front of him. There's listeners that hate guns that are going, oh my, seriously?
I know.
And so we would be shooting a little Ruger Bearcat, which is a single action 22, pow, pow, pow. Listen, some of my greatest memories of a child are those memories. Truly, truly, truly. And my dad and I would reload well into my teenage years. We did reloading. It was great dad-son time. And so when folks make it evil, when they try to spin that, Tammy, it's such a foreign thing to me to think no guns, because they've always been around.
Me too, because, I grew up with only rifles, mainly. I grew up actually just the opposite, shooting rifles, and some of my best memories are hunting with my brothers. We grew up in the country, and we would go bird hunting and varmint hunting, and I had 4 brothers, and we were very close, and those are some of my best memories. So I agree.
Well, in the end, I guess it's important for us, you and me, to continue to advocate for this and get as many people as we can to get trained, and if nothing else,
Absolutely.
even if they don't want to be gun people, to make themselves aware so that they can, if nothing else, understand and respect it. I think that's critical.
Absolutely.
In fact, when you talk about things like the CPL class for concealed pistol licensing, I tell folks, even if you don't ever want to carry, that's fine. Go through the class, because after 30 years of carrying, when I had to go through the class, there were things I learned that went, wow, I didn't know that. So I think
Right.
I think there's benefit to it. Listen, Tammy, we're out of time, so I've got to let you go. But Tammy Clark,
Okay.
we've got to get you back on, because I saw your little comment on Facebook about workplace violence and all that.
Oh, yeah.
You and I have got to dive into that topic somewhere in the future.
Okay, sounds great. I look forward to working with
Very,
you.
very nice. Thanks, Tammy Clark.
Thank you.
Folks, we'll be right back.
RenegadeRiver.com is new and used firearms, all priced to sell, plus ammo, reloading supplies, optics, clothing, lasers, and yes, tactical gear. RenegadeRiver.com, family owned right here in Michigan, because you deserve it.
Now, back to the Mike Hewitt Show on News Talk 1090 WKBZ and Talk 1230 WTKG.
And the Mike Hewitt Show is brought to you by RenegadeRiver.com.
Listen, I got to tell you, before we jump into the show, just a couple little side notes. One of the pleasures that I receive, or honors even, that I get from chairing the 2nd District Republican Committee is I get to work with folks on the college Republicans with the Grand Valley State University and also at Hope College. Tomorrow I get to join in the meeting for the kickoff for Hope College's College Republican Club. And I've been working with Michael Sullivan from GVSU College Republicans all along. All jokes aside, when we get into these conversations on the air, and sometimes you feel like, oh, jeepers, is there going to be a tomorrow? One of the things I get out of chairing it is I get to work with those young folks, and I can tell you, it don't always look like a bright future, but it really is. These folks they're young, they're excited, they're involved, and it's really truly an honor to work with them. So that aside, thank you very much, folks, going for being active and doing those things at both Hope and at GVSU, and frankly at all of the other colleges that are within earshot and beyond. But then before I get into the show, I got to ask, Miles, you just came back from vacation.
Yep.
Where'd you go?
I was up in the great state of Alaska.
Okay. Was it a little cool up there?
It was a little bit cooler than it is back here in Chicago, yeah, but it
wasn't
too bad.
Was it, say, cool enough to keep an iceberg intact?
Well, it's funny because we went out on one of the boating cruises in the southern part of the state, and it involved viewing 2 glaciers.
Right.
And I thought it was fascinating when the guide said the expansion rate of both of these glaciers, and we're talking about southern Alaska. We're not talking about northern Alaska.
Did you say melt rate or expansion rate?
Expansion rate?
That means getting bigger.
That's right.
I just wanted to clarify. It's getting bigger.
So I was somewhat amused, and this is when I texted you about, if there's global warming, it apparently hasn't arrived at southern Alaska yet because the glaciers continue to expand here.
It's amazing to me when you think about how they can tell a story that folks can buy into almost on the point of being a religion. They've had tens of thousands of emails that were hacked and published that were scientists exchanging information on how to make the formulas produce a given result and deciding which words would best move the populace, but without any real actual tangible evidence. But yet there's buy-in, and I've never understood that. To the point where some colleges, what was the name of the college we just saw a week or so ago that banned any kind of dialogue against global warming? And you go, really? That's on a college? It's somewhere out west.
Yeah.
I can't think of it. Doesn't make any difference. The fact that folks are taking it so serious, and it is a religion because they're not there. Speaking of that, Miles, the other thing, you sent some pictures while you were up there, and did I see, was that bears or sea lions? What was I looking at?
Yeah, I think I sent you a picture of a series of sea lions. I guess they they sleep all day and hunt all night.
Right.
So the picture that you saw was them.
What a life.
Basically just sleeping on rocks.
And they were pretty safe because there are no more polar bears because they died with the melting icebergs, right?
Yep. Yep, yeah, apparently, but they didn't die because they ran out of glaciers. I know that for a fact.
Rumor is they're so fat and happy that they don't want to go after the sea lions anymore.
Yep, I can certainly understand that. No, as a matter of fact, the sea lions, now there were a couple of younger ones, and they would just fake like they couldn't get up on the rock and just flip themselves back into the water. So, I mean, they were happy. They were just splashing around in the water.
Sometimes I have the same problem. I get in one of those deep chairs and I can't get my big self out anymore. Life is tough. Listen, on a slightly different note, back here in the great state of Michigan, it looks like now they're back saying that Michigan is in play. First it was in play, then it wasn't in play, and then it was in play. It looks like it's in play. What say you? Have you been back long enough to start looking at polling again?
Yeah, I've noticed that quite a few states that it looked like Hillary was starting to pull away on, that Trump's now coming back to tighten up the Carolinas. Virginia, he's still slightly behind, but I have read multiple times that Michigan is definitely in play.
Latest polls, and I'm reading this from the gatewaypundit.com, guy named Jim Hoft. Latest polls show Trump up or tied in blue states, Iowa, Maine, Michigan, New Hampshire, Ohio, and Wisconsin. But I did read somewhere that he's 1 point behind in Texas. And I thought, I don't think I believe that one.
I don't believe that.
I don't know that I believe it at all. But one of the things that's fascinating about all of these polls is that it's truly like reading chicken bones. You throw them out on the floor. Is he ahead or behind? I don't know. Hang on. Let me change the light a little bit. Nobody really knows. And the interesting part is that the pundits on TV who are clearly advocating for Hillary will say, and I've watched this, I got a kick out of it. That's why I wanted to talk about it today. They'll say, yes, he is ahead 2 points in the national polls, but the national polls don't matter anymore. We need to be looking at state polls. And then I start looking at state polls. Folks, the reason they want to look at state polls is they're 2 weeks old. I'm just saying. That's why they want to look at them. And they're not even making an attempt at being honest about what they're doing.
Yeah, all of a sudden the national polls don't matter after
the national
years.
Polls mattered all along, especially when she was 8 or 10 points out in front. Then it's done. Quit spending money and go home. National polls say you're done. National polls don't matter. We need to look at state polls. State polls are 2 weeks old. Well, that was right after her convention. All of these things as predictable as rain, but we don't have to worry about that.
But Mike, you know, the one thing I was digging into that CNN poll that came out yesterday.
Yep.
And I encourage the listeners, anytime you run into a poll, don't just read the summary, dig into it and actually figure out what all is behind it.
Amen.
When you dig into that CNN poll, the thing that I thought that was fascinating that nobody's saying anything about is that the pro-Trump group is either they're already camped out at their place ready to vote or they're excited about voting. And in those areas where Hillary is leading, when you dig into their enthusiasm,
right,
they're almost to the point of saying, I'm not going to vote,
right, or
I'm contemplating not voting. The enthusiasm gap is huge. So, look, even if she wins a poll, if all of her people are staying home, it doesn't matter.
Well, but that goes, Miles, that goes to the point that they were debating when they say, okay, the polls are whatever they were, although she can hardly fill a movie theater, much less a stadium with supporters, and they kept saying that doesn't matter, but it did matter during the primary.
Right.
So he can fill a football field in a second. She can't fill a bathroom. Well, with the computer server, that's different though.
The takes up space.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the point is that it does go to enthusiasm, and one of the reasons I've got Gary Johnson, my notes say to make sure to mention Gary Johnson because listen, I've met Gary a couple times. I don't agree with him on a lot of issues, but he's not a bad guy. One of the things, though, that I took away from my meetings, this is when I chaired the Republican Liberty Caucus of Michigan a number of years ago. And when I didn't get the sense that he was uber left. Now when I'm watching him, and I got Gary Johnson people right now mad at me, no, I'm not saying he's uber left. But what I am saying is he is clearly trying to get Bernie Sanders supporters. And I find it fascinating because the media would have us so focused on the splinters within the GOP. But listen, if you're a guy like Gary Johnson who's spending a lot of money on marketing right now, we hear his commercials all the time in Michigan. The man is spending some dough. And he's had to sit down in a little conference room with campaign people. He's got some professionals surrounding him. He's not new to politics. He gets it. He understands. And he sat down. He's done the math. Is there a greater chance of me pulling on the splinter within the GOP or pulling on the splinter within the Democratic Party? And he's made a calculated decision to drive towards carbon tax and erasing the borders. And yes, libertarians, and I differ on the border, but he's taken a leftist libertarian stance on that on purpose. And it's for this election. And it goes to Miles's point that she's going to have a tough time getting those folks to go and vote. She really is. I'm going to stand in line and do what? For who?
That was one of the things they said yesterday, I heard, was, are these polls actually going to help her get people motivated because they hate Trump so much and they see she's behind?
But that's what they're trying to use him for now.
Yeah, now all of a sudden he's leading and they're going, oh, we got to use these to get people rejuvenated.
But that's the point that folks have to know. When you're looking at these polls, it does exactly that, by the way. They use them first to demoralize the Republican voters and specifically Trump supporters. That's what the goal of the media was to use them to demoralize. Now that exact same media is using it to gin up some activity on the Democratic side. You folks aren't even trying to be unbiased or journalistic anymore.
They've said that. They've said that if they came out and actually covered this race without being biased, it would be a dishonest and a disservice to the public because Trump is so bad that they would actually be lying to the people if they did this unbiased.
So if they told the truth, it'd be lying.
Yeah.
I don't understand that.
They believe that by covering them equally and just as friendly, that would be wrong.
But they're not doing that.
Exactly. It was their justification.
Well, yeah, I mean, you remember the first guy to start that movement, Jorge Ramos from Telemundo.
Right.
This is the guy that's been dogging Trump since the primaries. And he was one of the first ones to get all bent out of shape that Trump went to Mexico. Okay, and he's the one who started the idea, let's start covering Trump falsely.
What do you guys, when you say cover him falsely, do you mean to cover him negatively, to ignore all of the positives about him?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. But I don't get your logic, Ludwig. If when they're doing what they're doing, if they covered him truthfully, they wouldn't be covering the negatives. So if they think he's so bad,
they're basically just not covering him at all. Except for only negative, and they only show positive about her, that they're being so slanted against with her.
Okay.
For her.
But if he were as bad as that they're suggesting that they need to do that, then covering the truth of him would destroy him.
Yeah. Or
are they just thinking that they're smarter than listeners, and so they're saying, all you people are stupid, we're going to have to take care of you?
That's what I get out of it.
Is that what you get out of it? Miles, does that make sense? Does the media think we're stupid?
Yep.
Folks, I got to tell you something. I don't care if you're Democrat, Republican, Trump, none of those things. You should be uberly insulted by the media. You really should be. When I watch Fox News or NBC or any of them, when I watch them, and I'll sit there with my iPad and listen to the stories that they tell, and then I go try to find corroborating stories, it's insulting what they call news. It really is. Just actually spend one evening, just pick an evening, I don't care, Pick an evening. Could be Saturday night when there's no real news, unless you're the FBI and you're dumping your information on Friday. Then the weekend's kind of busy, but there's no one there to pay attention except for us political wonks. Shame on them, by the way. I've never seen an FBI that out. Well, that's not true. The FBI started out that political.
Yeah.
Its founding was that political. So we've made it this. We've tried to imagine it as this impugnable, wonderful. It's not. It's political. It's a political arm. That's clearly what it is when it does an information dump on Friday evening.
Well, the director aren't they appointed by the president?
Yeah, but everyone said this guy's a nice guy.
All I ever heard was that he was conservative and he would walk if she wasn't going to be. Loretta Lynch had to go with him to press conferences to make sure he didn't say Islamic terrorism.
I hate to beat an old drum, but I would have loved to have been on that airplane when they met out on the tarmac.
Oh, Lynch and Clinton.
How much Do-Re-Mi exchanged hands? He's only worth $80 million. I'm talking about Bill Clinton.
He is.
He is.
But his foundation's worth way more. So.
Well, she's worth $30 million. He's worth $80 million.
Yeah.
And they're here to take care of us. And Trump's one of the evil rich guys.
Hey, they're just trying to pay their bills.
And
man.
you sit and you listen to the logic. You go, seriously? Relatives said over the weekend, what's wrong with socialism? Can't everyone just have an equal share? That's what a relative said. I said, it defies human nature. It just does. It defies human nature. Miles, am I wrong again?
Yeah, I mean, it provides no incentive to better ourselves. If we're all getting the same money,
right,
and we all live in the same home, we all drive the same car, we all eat the same food.
Why work hard?
There is no incentive,
right,
to build an iPhone, to build an iPad,
right.
In which case, then your society basically just collapses.
And so I said to that same person, if Barbra Streisand is worth $300 and some million, why shouldn't she split that money up with all of the artists that are trying to make singing careers? Why, let's make them all rich. There's a lot of dough there. You have that kind of money, you can make a lot of starving artists that can sing like I can't talk right now with my sore throat. Yeah. Heck, I should get my chair. I can sing right now. And you sit and what would, and you get the deer in the headlight look.
What they don't get is when you ask somebody that's like an average, everyday person, they'll be all over it. Well, Tom Hanks and George Clooney think we should do it.
Why don't they split
have hundreds
their
of
money?
Millions. Why aren't they giving it? Where's my check from them?
They want us to split ours, not theirs.
Yeah. Socialism is all about you doing it, not me doing it.
Socialism is about a two-caste system,
yeah.
A very small elite percent. And somehow what's irony, it blows my mind, a lot of the uber left, they'll follow the Hollywood oh, yeah, well, what this person, I don't even know that person's name. I wouldn't know them if they walked in the station and started talking to me. But they're uber left, and the media loves them, and the Hollywood media, I should say. Yeah. But none of them want to share a penny with anybody.
No.
And I just mind-boggling. Absolutely mind-boggling. It is. Yeah, well. All right, listen, we need to go to a break and come back and do a little Enigma report with something else that is mind-boggling. All right, folks, we'll be right back.
Renegade River, guns and ammo, and so much more. Old-fashioned service with surprisingly low prices. On M104 at the top of the new 231 bypass in Utica. Or find us at renegaderiver.com because you deserve it.
This is News Talk 1090 WKBZ and Talk 1230 WTKG.
And this is the Mike Hewitt Show, brought to you by renegaderiver.com.
3, 2, 1, 0.
You have arrived to your final destination on your journey through reality. Welcome to the Enigma Report.
So almost 8 years ago, we watched almost President Obama with the reverb in the microphone. Can we do reverb in the microphone, make me sound like a god?
That,
you got to see this
that
face.
Piece of equipment is like
not
unplugged.
Yeah, not in here.
Not in here. Sorry.
I can't do the Elvis nothing.
I can just make this. Try it.
No, I can't do
All
it.
Right.
I couldn't do it with a straight face. At the time, I don't know how he did it. I don't. But listen, the folks at the time said George W. Bush has utterly destroyed the United States' reputation in the world, and the only thing that can save us is Obama, the Greek god. who then talked like a Greek god. And you go, are you sure that's what happened? Because that's not how I remember it. Well, now we're 7.5, 8 years later, and the man flies to China to do the G20 meeting as he tours the Pacific Rim. Am I wrong?
Oh.
So he flies into China. Took Nixon to go to China, by the way. I'm just saying. So the guy goes to China. And what happens when a president lands in a foreign land? Well, none other than China.
A parade?
And a lot of times, the stairs roll up to the what stairs? The stairs roll up. The pretend stairs roll up, and there's music playing, and there's a bunch of military folks standing out, and the military of other nations are saluting the president. George W. Bush, by the way. That's what I'm describing. When the president comes down, Ronald Reagan, by the way. Truman, by the way. Every president I can think of, save one. The stairs roll up. The red carpet unrolls.
Even for Carter?
The military, even Jimmy Carter, when he carried his own empty suitcases. You remember that, Miles?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so I get to kick every time I get to say it. The point is that that's the respect the United States had because it kept its commitments. It watched its allies. It worked with them to defend them and our interests against enemies. It did these things. And so there was some reverence for it. Yes, there was jealousy. I'm not trying to paint out a perfect world. But there was respect, and respect is the foundation. It's one of the things we've talked about on this show a lot that seems to have been lost in America. It's why on Facebook I can say I don't agree with you and have people call me just outrageously filthy names and unfriend me because there's no respect. That's really what it's about. We've talked about it endlessly about two human brains of 100 billion cells sitting on a table with entirely different experiences agreeing on everything at once. It's not going to happen. But there's no respect. So therefore you get the vulgar language in the click off. And I watched the President of the United States. No, I'm not a particularly strong Obama supporter. But that's Air Force One, folks. That's the United States of America. That's the entire population of the United States of America landing on Chinese territory. And they had to exit out the staff stairways at the back of the plane. And you go, really? Honest? That's what we've come to, is we're one of the great nations of the world. Forget what we think about their politics. Forget all of those things. China's got a really long history. And in fact, a lot of it, more of it has been our ally than has not. Folks are going, that's not true. Yes, it is. Read up a little bit on World War II. Okay? My point is that that's what they did to the United. That's where our Greek god with the reverb and the microphone has taken us on the world stage, and domestically too, I might add. We have absolutely got out the big gigantic eraser and got rid of the word respect. This guy goes on an apology tour for 7 years telling people how rotten we are and this is how we're treated for it. Because they went, jeepers, maybe he's right. Maybe he doesn't deserve respect. I can't even say on the air what the other president called him. And did you see the look of President Putin in him? Did you see that look? Honest. Those are not the two guys that can go on a walk on their own to resolve the differences between Russia and the United States the way that President Reagan and his counterpart in Russia did. They're nobody going to go out to the Crawford Ranch together. Truman had a great relationship during the deepest of the Cold Wars. By comparison. Folks, that's an enigma to me. And now they're going, oh my goodness, Trump? Really, Trump? Yes,
you know what,
really, Trump.
Trump proved it.
Yes,
I'll
he
go
did.
down to Mexico and I'll sit with my most adversarial opponent right today.
Yep.
Is the Mexican president.
Right.
Let's go down, let's sit, talk. He will meet with anybody, anywhere, anytime.
Miles,
but you disrespect him, he's going to walk out on you.
Is it an enigma to you, Miles?
Oh, yeah. But I mean, it's not surprising, like I was saying earlier, if you're going to trash the country out, if you're going to trash its history out,
yep,
you're going to trash everything about it, and many of the things that make the country great. If you're going to trash all that out, then nobody's going to respect you. Of course they're going to treat you like that, because you're basically demonstrating you don't even respect the United States. And this is the president of the United States.
Right. It's to me, I fear for our future when when I started the show today, I talked about the Hope College Republicans and the GVSU College Republicans. I keep that in my mind when I'm saying I fear for our future. But when you have a president that's done this, meanwhile, on a slightly different note, I'm reading an article here from the Daily Caller. Liberals like this place. The Daily Caller, Republicans on Capitol Hill gain confidence in Trump. Miles, did you see that article?
I haven't read it yet, but I did see it.
Yeah, the confidence grows, not wanes, grows. No matter what the media does, it grows. And when we see things like how this dovetails, when most citizens, when the average citizen, let me back up, when the average citizen that bothers to vote sees the United States being slapped in the face by China, by Putin, by this guy from, and you go, really? This is it? And they think, you know what? We need a different path because the path that we're on is not the right path. And I'm trying to pull this together because I don't see how Hillary Clinton can divorce herself from China not sending the stairs up for Air Force One. That was her foundation politics put into place for the United States in her role as Secretary of State for the majority of the time he spent in office. The first 4 years of it, she's the Secretary of State. She's the one that's laying the groundwork. She's the one with the reset button. Now we're the one without a staircase to Air Force One. No kidding. How does she divorce herself from that, Miles?
I have absolutely no idea.
How does the average voter sitting at home thinking G.W. Bush was a train wreck and Trump is worse, watch that scene and not go, wait a minute, is the media lying to me? Is there something going on here that I better pay closer attention to? How do they not do that? When they see Gary Johnson playing to the left instead of the right, don't people go, what's going on here? It's an enigma to me that these things are happening at a time when we should be the other direction. Our technology is more advanced than it's ever been. There's so many positives, and yet the political left seems bent on trying to bring everybody's spirit down, bent on saying we're not. And I don't know how that's a votable message. I don't get it.
But I think but that also explains the lack of enthusiasm, though, too.
I think you're right. I do wonder what turnout will be. I do wonder what turnout will be. If I were look at it from Gary Johnson's point, if I'm a Bernie Sanders supporter and I'm looking at her, and forget Bernie Sanders for a minute, if I believe in the Democratic platform in the doctrine of transparency, if I really believe in these things, honest to God, how do you vote for Hillary?
She married this policy with him, though. Because when this happened to Obama, they asked, what would you do? And she goes, I'd get off the plane, too. You have to get off to make things work. And Trump and Pence said, they did it to us. We give them 5 minutes and we're leaving.
Yeah.
There's a difference. I want the guy who's going to walk out on Gorbachev, not pander to Gorbachev.
I agree with that.
Trump would have left.
But the difference, and you said that when we were off air too, the difference though, and I'm still trying to fight you a little bit, because I don't think Trump would have placed himself or the United States' prestige level in that circumstance. I just don't. It's never happened to a president in China. And listen, the Chinese folks are really big into tradition. This one, it's not an oversight to forget to send the staircase out to the airplane. That's not an oversight.
No.
That's where someone was ordered, don't send the staircase.
Well, they say they were arguing. The Chinese people were arguing with the ground people from the U.S. about what case stairs were going to go, and was the red carpet going to get put out, not put out. They were arguing about it on the ground.
Because they didn't want them there.
No.
There's not. I mean, we got to chase to the end result here. They don't want you here.
I don't get is he canceled a meeting with the Philippines, but yeah, he's going to go to Laos for the first time ever. Why are we going to Laos for the first time ever but canceling an allies meeting?
Canceling a meeting with the president that called him a name?
Yeah, but that was canceled. That was part of the reason he called him that, I believe. Was he canceled the meeting and then he got called that.
Well, I don't know. I can't blame him for not going after the guy said what he said.
No, but he also had Chavez hold his hand up while he
Listen,
signed the book,
I was not a Bill Clinton supporter, but last week on the show during the Enigma Report, we played a little over a minute of Bill Clinton's State of the Union address on immigration. That party they've changed directions hugely since then. Folks, I'm hearing the music, so do me a personal favor. Find us on Facebook /The Mike Hewitt Show. Follow us on Twitter @Talk Mike Hewitt. Miles and Ludwig and Brian, thank you very much. Folks, thank you very much. And if you can help the folks, the college Republicans at Hope or GVSU, please do so, because those college Republicans are trying to make a difference in West Michigan. Folks, we'll see you next Wednesday at 9 a.m. See you then.